And good morning to Musical Mornings with Rock Island Sound, brought to you with or I should say by Westchester Children's Museum. My name is Alan Lighty. I'm a guitar instructor, and today we are going to learn about the great guitar player Reverend Gary Davis. So he's somebody that probably most of you do not know about. He was born in 1896 in North Carolina. This is what he looks like. So went by different monikers. That means like names. And one would be Blind Gary Davis because he was blind. And he would walk the streets of New York City and play his guitar and for spare change. And he would also preach on Sundays at little back storefront churches in the Bronx. Eventually he got a house in Queens, New York, and he is buried in Long Island. He died in 1972, so that's a long time ago. Be it not to mention being born in 1896. Now, what makes him so special is he crossed over all genres of music. So genre is a big term for type of music. So don't let that word scare you. He did blues. And I'm going to give examples of like these different styles that he could play in. He got out of the blues when he got married because his wife Annie did not want him playing the blues because the blues was the devil's music and it would only get him into trouble. Okay? He also played ragtime. Unbelievable ragtime guitarist. So the ragtime style, which developed in the 20s and 30s, was mostly bands and piano players, but he would play them on the guitar by playing the left hand, the stride bass, what the piano would do with his thumb, and he'd play the melodies with his index finger. Now, he only used, I shouldn't say only, but he used his index finger and he used his thumb. He would wear picks most of the time. He could play without picks. He was a multi-instrumentalist. He could play unbelievable harmonica, banjo. I mean, any instrument that he picked up, he could probably play. So he played a couple of blues tunes early in his life when he made some recordings in, say, I think it's like 32 or 36. But after that, he really didn't do any blues playing until the end of his life, when he was so-called rediscovered. He used to joke that his career really began when he was 65. So just think about that. You're 65, you're touring the world, meeting famous rock bands and stuff, and everybody loved this guy. Everybody played some of his songs, like especially in what we call the folk revival folk scene. So besides blues and ragtime, he would play what he called old-timey music. And then the thing that he's known most for and his most, I'll say, revolutionary musical stuff was what we call the holy blues. So what he would do is he would take religious texts, because he was a very religious guy, and put them into a format of guitar playing that was more blues-like. And it's very unique, very original. Tons of bands, like rock and roll bands, discovered him in the 70s. Some of you might be too young to know these bands, but I'm sure your parents do. But it would be like Hot Tuna, Jefferson Airplane. These are mostly San Francisco-based bands. The Grateful Dead. I mean, lots of people covered his songs. And there was a folk group that was called Peter, Paul, and Mary. They were very famous back in the 60s. They did a cover of his song Samson and Delilah, which is basically the story the biblical story of Samson and Delilah, and he demanded that he would get royalty rights from their recording, and the record studios did not want to give him royalty rights. So royalty rights means if you compose a piece of music, that you should get money for every time that that song is played, say on the radio or live. And that's only fair. If it's your personal work of art, you should get something for it. So after a long battle, the record company agreed to pay him royalties, and with that royalty money, he moved out of his apartment in the Bronx and bought a nice little home in Queens. Okay? So that's enough of the history lesson. Let me give you some examples of his music. So I think I'm a good shot here. So as far as the blues, it would be straight ahead, not so much what we discussed earlier, 12-bar blues, very complicated stuff. So that tune is a very abridged, shortened version. It's called I'm Throwing Up My Hands. Like, hallelujah, I'm throwing up my hands. Now, what you might have noticed is I used my thumb on the lowest string, the sixth string. Classical players, classically trained players, say like Andrew, who's going to do violin Monday mornings for you, they play from the front. They never come over the back of the neck. But fortunately or unfortunately, Reverend Gary Davis, when he was a little baby, broke his wrist. And as today, people of color, African Americans, they did not get the medical care that a lot of other people would get. They were not thought of as the same, I hate to say it, class of musician or person. So they set his hand incorrectly, which enables him to wrap his thumb over the top. And he uses his thumb over the top all over the guitar. And another very famous guitar player who plays very similar to Reverend Gary Davis is Jimi Hendrix, who a lot of people consider the greatest electric guitar player of all time. He also uses his thumb over the top. And another side note with blind Reverend Gary Davis, he was not born blind. He had a little bit of a problem with his sight when he was young, and doctors put these drops in his eyes, which blinded him for life. So 2 medical mishaps kind of created his career. So I have a philosophy, I mean, you have to live in the moment, live for the future. And he did that, and he took a bad situation and he made it into a beautiful, wonderful thing. So that's his blues style. Lots of single string runs, not your standard chord progression. He could improvise for hours on a piece. So let me show, I got my list here, ragtime. Here we go. So called 12 Sticks. Again, you can see he utilizes the entire fingerboard of the guitar. Most players, early blues players, ragtime players, they did not. He was almost a precursor to the style of music we call jazz. So that's kind of very up. I remember whenever I would play that in schools for the kids, everybody would start dancing. Okay, so that's ragtime. We've been over the blues, the ragtime. The piece I first started with, that's what I would call the holy blues. But let's go to his old-timey style here. One of his most famous songs was called Candyman. And back in the 60s, everybody down in the Soho and Lower Manhattan played this song, or tried to play this song. He would call this kind of music old-timey music. In this particular piece, although everything is right here in what we call the first position, it's a lot harder to play than it sounds. And what he has is on the third string, this alternating note that just stays through the entire song. So just listen for that note. And it's off the beat. In other words, he flipped what the strong beat would be. Instead of being on 1 and 3 or a lower note to a higher note, he goes from a higher note to a lower note. So just listen for this. So you could hear that constant tone. Now he literally could play this at parties for hours, the same song, and I'm not making this up. There's a lot of students that study with him that are alive today, and they tell all the stories of him going to some place and just playing Candyman literally for an hour. He was an unbelievable musician, and I can tell you, I've been playing a long time, and just holding that chord down for 3 minutes and not being able to move it, it's a lot of energy involved. So that's what we call the straight ahead Candyman. Then he has what's called a two-step Candyman. So I know we went over the parameters of music. That means the different parts. There's 5 different parts: rhythm, pitch, color, which means like what instrument, dynamics, which means how loud, how soft, and articulation. That means how you hit the string. Do you slide? Do you hammer on? Like a slide would be, a hammer on would be, a pull off would be the opposite. These little things are what make music special and make it unique. Okay. So last week we went over color pretty much when I did the 12-string guitar, but this week rhythm. So the rhythm to that Candyman is just like a constant off the beat, so to speak, rhythm, where the high note is the strong beat. Here's two-step Candyman. So most of the pitches are the same. Out of the 5 parameters, meaning parts of music, rhythm is the thing that he really changes here. So it's going to be felt like in 2, like 1, 2, 1, 2, like that. So it sounds very similar to the other Candyman because most of the pitches are the same. It's the rhythm. It's the way he attacks or hits the strings with your right hand. And that is the key to playing guitar. And if any of you are interested in learning how to play the guitar, give Rock Island Sound a call, or any musical instrument. Or if you need a new set of strings or reeds for your clarinet, they've got all your supplies that you would need. Give them a call. Terrytown, Rye, 2 locations. They are open for business. They're being safe. You have to wear a mask. And I hope all of you are wearing masks when you're out, because unfortunately this COVID thing is not going away soon. So that's 2 types of Candyman, where basically it's the rhythm, the rhythmic structure or the feel. The pitches are the same. I mean, the dynamics, how loud, how soft, that's pretty much the same. You use the same kind of articulation, big word. I mean, how you hit the notes or pull-offs, again, is a guitar thing, pulling off or hammering down or slides. So those 2, a lot of people play the regular Candyman. Very few people can play the 2-step Candyman because it's extremely difficult to play, believe it or not. It sounds simple, doesn't look flashy like all over, but it's very difficult because it's the right hand. Now, I'm going to close it out here kind of with, and please don't forget to tune in tomorrow for Rachel. We've got Andrew violin on Mondays. We got Rachel again, I believe, on Tuesdays. We have Noah on Wednesdays, and I will be here next Thursday trying to entertain you with something about the guitar. Here's what we call the Waltz Time Candyman. I have never heard anybody play this song except for Reverend Gary Davis on one obscure album. So there's no like written music for it. You have to just like put on the album or the cassette. See, I'm dating myself from when I learned this stuff, or CDs or YouTube, and just listen to them over and over again. Waltz time means it's in 3. 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's kind of like a dance feel. All of these things have a dance feel. But if you go 1, 2, 3, 1. So, if there are any kids out there watching? 1, 2, 3. This is our tempo. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2. sounds very similar. All three of those will sound similar because the pitch, what the note is, the frequency, how high or how low on a piano key or on your guitar, those notes, those pitches are pretty much the same. Again, the color where I'm hitting the guitar, the technique, it's pretty much the same. Dynamics, how loud, how soft, it's the same. It's basically the rhythm, and that's why rhythm is the most important thing in music. I'm sure that the other instructors will agree. You hit a wrong note or you play a little loud or too soft, that's one thing, everything will keep going. But if you mess up the rhythm, you either just stop the rhythm, don't play in the right rhythm, especially with other people, the whole band will just fall apart. Everybody in the orchestra, that's why they have a conductor. It's basically for rhythm. That's why he's conducting. Conducting means showing everybody what the rhythmic beat is. Drum solo or just playing drums, there is no real pitch involved. There might be, but it's rhythmic. So you want to make sure that your rhythm is the key. So I'm going to play this just one more time so you really feel that it's in 3. And I've learned this like 4 days ago, so I'm still learning this song. But I can get through it for you guys. Here we go. Still hear that right through the whole piece. If it was the regular Candyman, it would be, there's that alternating note. In the two-step Candyman, it would be here. I'm just trying to bring out that one note. So it's kind of buried in the middle of the two-step, and it's front and center in this waltz time. Okay, so that just shows you how brilliant the Reverend Gary Davis was, and how well he was versed in music, using the entire fingerboard, inventing his own chords by bringing his thumb over the top to make it easy for him. For us mere mortals, it's very difficult to bring the thumb over the top for a lot of this stuff. And he could play in many styles. So to play us out here, I will play another kind of ragtimey piece. I totally forgot about the carnival tunes. He had just so many things, and it's hard to get through all this in a half hour. So maybe I'll do another lesson with him in a couple of weeks. tune has many more verses and everything to go with it. That's called Slow Drag. And it looks like I've run out of my allotted time. So please tune in tomorrow for Rachel. Thank you very much to Westchester Children's Museum. Remember Rock Island Sound. Please support all your local businesses. They really need your help right now, especially as we're trying to get back on our feet. Wear your masks. Be safe. I feel like a real dad now, but you know, wash your hands. You never know. It's not just about you. It's about your parents, your grandparents, your friends, your children. All right? So be safe out there and try to enjoy some music today.